to Soulful Conversations.
I was born with a hammer in my hand.
Hi people, it's Ash Greenwald here, getting involved in a few Soulful Conversations, and I hope you're having an absolute ball out there in life and breaking a few patterns and doing your thing in general. We've got an amazing podcast this week with the hard rockin' double bass player from the living end and good buddy of mine, Mr. Scott Owen. I think you're going to see another dimension of Scotty. He's an absolute legend, one of the nicest guys in Australian rock music, and he's been a good friend to me for many years, and we get on like an absolute house on fire because we love deep conversations, and that's what this podcast is all about. So I know you're going to love this podcast, and I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank our wonderful sponsors, Otis Eyewear, who make glass lenses, unlike most sunnies that are, well, many sunnies that are cheap crap and are made of plastic. But I'm sure they'd be upset with me for rubbishing other brands, so I'm not going to do that. But I would say that Otis make glass lenses and are very cool, and I like them. And you know that on this podcast and at Earth Bottles HQ, we spend a lot of our time trying to get rid of as much plastic as possible, particularly the single-use kind, but it's very cool to be wearing sunnies that don't have plastic lenses. So without further ado, Mr. Scotty Owen.
Welcome to Soulful Conversations with Ash Greenwald. In this podcast, we interview inspiring and amazing people, musicians, surfers, and experts in mindset, creativity, health, well-being, and making the world a better place. I'm tired of beating around the bush. I want to go deep and have a soulful conversation.
This podcast is brought to you by Earth Bottles. At Earth Bottles, we are on a mission to end single-use plastics, offering a full range of beautiful double-insulated bottles, reusable coffee cups, food and tea canisters, stainless steel straws, bags, and lots of plastic-free eco-goodies. So head over to www.earthbottles.com.au for a 10% discount using the promo code ASHLOVESME. Together, we can make a change and break up with single-use plastics.
Hello and welcome to Soulful Conversations, Melbourne Winter Edition. And I'm joined by my good buddy, Scotty Owen of the Living End. How you going, brother?
I'm great, thank you, Ash. It's the cold garage sessions, isn't it, where some of the most creative stuff has happened in freezing cold garages in the world.
Absolutely. Some of the best stuff in rock and roll has happened. Speaking of rock and roll, let's just start on the old music thing. How you guys been going in Living in town?
We've been going great. Hey, we were in Birdsville recently playing the gig that goes down as the most remote music festival in the world, just in its proximity to anywhere else. Yeah, you have to drive for thousands of kilometres to get there. Birdsville on the border of Queensland, New South Wales, I don't know, middle of nowhere, Birdsville. And Midnight Oil played as well. So we played one night and we stayed for the following day, where we got to watch Casey, Chambers and Midnight Oil in the middle of the desert with this giant big red sand dune called Big Red as the backdrop. Midnight Oil came on just before sunset. It was unbelievable on so many levels. As a fan, more unbelievable. It was the best. But anyway, that wraps up a stack of touring for us. Basically, we'd just gotten back from overseas before that, and that's it now. I don't think we're going to do a hell of a lot for the rest of this year. There may be a trip to the States in a month or so for a gig or two, but that's about it. We'll fire back up again next year, pretty much.
And I was just looking on Instagram and stuff. Geez, you guys did some crazy shows over in Europe. It just looked like you were slaying it. How did that feel?
It always looks that way on the
nature of social media.
On the photos. That's great. But yeah, it was good. We did 2 festivals, one in Spain and one in France. One in Bilbao called Azkina, which is fabulous. Bilbao's great. And we went to Claire and my partner and I we had a couple of days there before the gig, and we went to San Sebastian, which is lovely. But we stopped halfway between Bilbao and San Sebastian. Sorry, I'm just going to go into holiday talk in the middle of tour talk. You do the math. We stopped halfway between, and we stopped in this little town called Zumaya or something. Which is on the coast, and we got onto the El Camino trail. Do you know this?
No.
Okay, there's a film called El Camino. That's why I know about it, and it's a pilgrimage that goes from somewhere in France.
Cool.
It's a religious thing. It's a Catholic thing. I think it's Saint Benedict. I don't know. I'm not going to even try and make up the story that I don't know. But yeah, it goes all the way down through France, like somewhere near Bordeaux. Down through France, across Spain, and into Portugal, I think. And it ends on the coast there somewhere. And people spend 5 months, I think it is, doing it, or 3 months, I think.
Wow.
The total of walking it. And it's epic. And there's a film about it with the Sheen, the father Sheen. Martin Sheen. Really good film called El Camino. That's how we found out about it. So anyway, we did 30 kilometres in one day on our feet.
Wow.
We set out for a run, for a little jog, as we do, Claire and I, and we ran to the next town.
Wow.
15 kilometres away, and turned around and came back.
Wow.
It was epic. And this coast is particularly amazing. It's what's called a geopark or something, where it's significant in the formation of the Earth, in that there was 2 continents that bumped up together against each other over however many millions of years. And the plates that formed the rock and everything, when they bumped up against each other, they were turned from horizontal to almost vertical. So the landscape on the coast, the reef and the rock cliffs along the coast, have evidence of the land that's basically been turned up into vertical from horizontal
used to be flat, yeah.
over millions of years, and these thin layers of earth. It just basically feels like you're looking into millions of years of history when you look at this thing, understanding what's happened and what's caused it to be like it is. So yeah, apart from just running through beautiful farmland and coming across donkeys and cows and snakes and things like this on the El Camino trail, and then running back along this beautiful coast, it was also like epic on a universal global level as well. So that was cool. And anyway, so we did the gig in Bilbao, which was epic, and the headliner of the night that we played was the Stray Cats.
One of your favourite bands. Influential on you?
Hugely influential. So when Chris and I first started playing music, we were a Stray Cats cover band. They were our big inspiration. So that was Bilbao, and then we went to France and we played at Hellfest, which is unreal. It's a massive metal festival, and the people who run it have bought the site that it's on, so they've built permanent structure on the site. And it's like a big medieval fortress. It's unreal.
The metal.
Yeah, total.
The metal.
It's the best festival. It's so cool. Wow. And it's it's huge. It's like there must be almost 100,000 people there, and there's 2 main stages are enormous. And they're huge, like it's massive metal, like thrash and metal and death metal and I don't know, all the different flavours of metal. In this, big medieval fortress with castles and turrets, and it's all like steampunk styled, and there's like a little forest in the middle of the site, and it's epic. It's so good. And we played on the Warzone stage. And it was unreal. It was really good. Metal heads are some of the best heads I've ever seen. And it was epic, that gig.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
It sort of ties into something you said. I've just been reading this book by Rupert Sheldrake called The Science of Spirituality. I think it's science and spirituality, but it's basically the science of spirituality. And it's saying that for all of those of us who aren't religious, we've missed out on, like, we've probably had the good sense to cast off our past religions or whatever. But now we miss out on all the ceremony. And there's things like prayer. It's almost like meditation. And I haven't gone into the book very far yet, but I know he's got all these things like he talks about prayer and meditation. So the whole idea of the book is like he takes 7 different religious practices that actually can be done as secular practices, and he talks about pilgrimages. That's what got me thinking about this, but also thinking about this thing where the metalheads come together. I mean, that sounds like that's so amazing that people would travel the world to go there. If you are into the metal, as I'm referring to the Jack Black song that we used to, or the Tenacious D song we used to love, that would be your holy pilgrimage to go there. And do you think that music fulfills a role that was previously part of religion?
Yeah, you can really easily draw analogies between the two, because it's got its gods, it's got its lords, it's got its, it's got a hierarchy of godly things. Music does, and it also you can take the language away from it, and it still speaks to the same emotions of all people all over the world as well. You really can. And this also, what you were saying about like prayer and things like this, like prayer really does serve a purpose, and ceremony really does serve a purpose as well, because it is an outlet for things that we have, feelings and things that we have inside us. And this is why I said metalheads are some of the best heads that I've ever known or seen or whatever, because this festival was big, and there was a lot of people there, and when I spent the day wandering around it and wandering through it and watching bands and stuff like this, and not at any point did I feel unsafe or did I feel like there was any aggro or aggression there. But then you would walk up to the main stage where there was probably 50,000-60,000 people watching an extremely aggressive band, and the crowd are going crazy, like as far as the whatever mosh kind of, stakes you put on it. It's hectic. But this is the thing, like they know this is what we do. We come to the festival, we've got our music and we've got our ritual, and we get it out of our systems, and then we go back to just being bloody lovely people, like we're metalheads and we've got an outlet, and this is what I loved about it. They're not all pent up and, they're not frustrated aggro people. They're people who know where to put their aggression. It's into the arts, it's into the drama and the theatre of metal, and that's how they get their aggression out. And they wear the costumes and the uniforms, and they go to the ceremonies and they do the ritual dancing, and they sing together, and it's unifying, and it's bloody beautiful. Metal, I really love it. I think it's a really great scene, and like as my mum said when we were sitting at the Tote having a beer one day, and there was a metal band that had sound checked, and this was in the afternoon. We were at the Tote pub in Melbourne, and there was a band sound checking, and we were like, oh, let's go and have a look. And we went in there, and it was a full-on metal band, and they did their sound check, and Mum was tapping her foot, and then they came in and they sat at one of the booths at the Tote and just had a beer. A few guys from the band or whatever, and they looked like metalheads. They looked like classic long-haired, rough around the edges guys, and Mum was just sitting there going, well, they play good. Look at those guys. They play pretty good music, and I bet you they're lovely guys. You don't ever judge a book by its cover. And she's absolutely right.
But your parents are special people.
Well, yeah, I guess they are. They're very open. They're very open people. Yeah. So anyway, this conversation started off about Europe, and then so after the Metal Fest, we went and did the support for the Stray Cats for 4 gigs in England, 2 in London and 1 in Birmingham and one in Manchester. So this is an epic trip for us because, we're such huge Stray Cats fans. They are such a huge part of our life. Like, Chris and I started off as a cover band and then we sort of grew our own style from that, but we've always kind of...
Were you literally a Stray Cats cover band, or you were doing all rockabilly standards and stuff?
We were called the Runaway Boys, which is a Stray Cats song title.
Right.
And also title of their first record. And we played... Our set was pretty much the Stray Cats. They did a lot of 50s covers and stuff as well, but we pretty much formed our style based on them.
Wow.
And then other things sort of came in and we grew out of that.
So you're 20 years in and you've accomplished everything that you've accomplished in the mainstream rock scene and whatever, and it must feel really cool at that point to go back and sort of almost realise a dream that has something to do with your roots.
Yeah, well, we did it, I can't remember when, I think it was about 2008 or something, that the Stray Cats... No, maybe it was 2003 or 4 or something, that the Stray Cats came... They did a reform gig and they came to Australia and we supported them in Melbourne at the Forum. And we've come across them once or twice over the years, but this was 4 gigs in a row supporting them in venues in the UK. So it was pretty epic.
Wow.
And then from there we went on to Dublin and just did our own little club show in Dublin, and that was it. It was just a really short and sweet little trip to Europe for us this time.
So were you running on the road most of the time?
A bit. There was a lot of travel, so it wasn't as easy to get up and go for a run as usual. But after that, Claire and I went to Egypt on the way home and went and we went for a run through the desert. That was pretty fantastic.
Wow.
But we went to Egypt. That was full on.
And what was Egypt like?
It was amazing. We went to Cairo and had a couple of days there where we stayed in Giza, so we could see the pyramids from where we stayed. So we went and checked them out. Went on a horse ride around them and saw them from a distance. But we went into Cairo and went to the market and to the museum and stuff. And then we went down. We caught the night train down to Luxor, which is about 800 k's down the Nile, to Luxor, which is where the Valley of the Kings is, which is where all the tombs are, and some other big temples and stuff. And we stayed there, had like a bit of a holiday there, just sort of, a bit of relaxation, but also some history as well. But I've been researching a lot about the pyramids and about Egypt's history, and it's mostly believed that they're about 3,000 years old, the pyramids, and that's about as far back as the history goes. But there's also the really weird theories about aliens and stuff like that.
Can you just go down that for 1 second and tell us? Or
well, I'm just going to tell you, there's some weird theories out there, but my interpretation of it all is that, here's what I've learned anyway. I've learned that I think that there was a period like 12,000 years ago or something where there was a civilization in Egypt that was thriving, that was like a really advanced civilization, and I think that it was over this period of time that the pyramids came about, all of them. There's 50 of them or something. And I've been studying some sort of theory about torsion fields. Do you know about this?
A little bit. Are they they're sort of shaped like a donut? Is that
they're like a spiral.
Like a torus. It goes. It's like people can't see the actions I'm making. I'm moving
the horns.
I'm moving my fingers in a circular motion, but that circular motion goes around in a donut shape. Like that's.
Yeah, like
I'm moving my fingers in two circles.
Like if you get a slinky and you join the two ends together.
There's a documentary called Thrive that talks a lot about that and says we should be thriving and that we used to have ancient energy devices and it's sort of been shut down or something like that. But What you got to say on that subject? I'm fascinated by this.
There was all this research done in Russia by this guy who started off in the 60s or whatever, and he ended up. He was he was considered a bit of a crack scientist, and Stalin ended up having him put into a concentration camp for lots and lots of years anyway, and he continued to sort of do his study in there, but he discovered that pyramids are conductors of torsion fields, so things like levitation and basically what seems to me like the means to build those things is built into those things, and I just think that that's what was going on. So to actually be there, to be there and to see them and to go inside them and see the tunnels that are built into them that go into the main king's chamber, the only ones that you're allowed in anyway, just looking down the straight lines and how perfectly built they are and stuff. It's like, it's not like a good build on a good house here. It's like really good. These lines are really perfect. Straight. These are really perfect, and to think that they were done without tools and stuff, it just makes you have to think on a different level. You can't just go, oh no, they used ropes and pulleys and
good with the chisel.
Yeah, they must have put a good crew together, a lot of people together. It's like, no, you just have to think. It makes you have to think on another level, and I like doing things like that, thinking on other levels. So yeah, it was epic to go and to see something in the flesh like a pyramid and the tombs and stuff like this, that where you can actually stand there and look at it and go, yeah, I can believe that things are happening on different levels, as far as maybe some sort of levitation, some sort of control of torsion fields, and understanding where a consciousness can create something like that, rather than just believing that it's as simple as just using your hands, man. Yeah, that was an epic trip.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I never have been there, and I would love to. And I think in my adult life, it's been interesting for me to start to realize that we always think, like, we're at the end point of the time that we know so far, like, and we always think that everything has led up to today. And, if you look back, it's sort of like you start to get a bit patronizing and think about people thousands of years ago as a little bit silly, or, they did the best they could. They believed in silly gods and did silly little things. But, I mean, the more you think about it, there's so much that's unexplained. And it seems like mainstream science, or anyone who purports to have that as their only thing that they're into, just shouts you down as soon as you start to wonder about those things. But I don't think all the answers are there yet.
No, I agree. It's become a bit of an interest of mine lately to kind of try and challenge what I understand as far as, linear time and Darwinism and all these kind of things. I know I remember sending a message to you ages ago saying, have you heard of the Yuga Cycle? Because it was something that I got a book about, and I started reading about it and going, wow. And you said, what is it? And I said, I don't know. It's something to do with challenging Darwinism and the universe and astronomy and astrology and blah, 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 blah. And you went, yeah, it sounds like one of those conspiracy theories. And I was like, yeah, it does. But I've come to learn more and more and more about it. And
Can you explain us? I still haven't.
It's a theory that of a like a Mayan, like the Mayan calendar, and basically it's the Yuga cycle is a cycle that goes for 26,000 years or something, and it's based on the pole that goes through the Earth. So we've got the Earth spinning, the planet, the solar system spinning. There's around the sun, blah 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 blah. But there's a pole that goes through the Earth that does a 26,000. It's got a wobble. It's not a straight pole that it's spinning around. It's got a slight wobble, and this wobble goes for 26,000 years. And it seems like when you look at the pyramids and when you look at all the ancient architecture, there's a geometry to it that points to certain parts in this cycle that has to do with the zodiacs and all this kind of stuff. I don't understand the science and the maths and the geometry of it in numbers and in really clear terms. Like I can't explain it to you like the people who know it properly can. But from what I'm learning about it, it just makes sense. And so anyway, it's I think it's around 26,000 year cycle that this pole does this wobble, and built into it is a period of 4 ages, and there's half of it is a descending side and the other half is an ascending side, and there's a golden age at the top, and then there's a silver age and a bronze age and a dark age, and so that's the descending 4 parts, and then there's the ascending 4 parts from the dark age at the bottom of the cycle going to bronze, silver and back up to gold. And it claims that basically we're just coming out of the dark age now, and it calls all these markers on what's happened over the last 12,000 years to go from the golden age down to the dark age that we've been through. And I'm not going to try and go into it because I know how conspiracy theory it sounds when someone like me who doesn't really know what they're talking about have a good way of explaining it goes. But when you hear it explained, it makes sense.
Well, this is where the power of the internet comes in, because we can put a few links to this.
Exactly.
So if you send some links, I'll post them on this podcast and people can look into that a little deeper if they want to, because it's easy to poo-hoo any idea that sounds weird to you anyone listening to this and myself right now. If I say, oh, that sounds a little weird, but until I really look into it and see the evidence, how can I have an opinion? So, I think it's good if there's a few links and people can have a look into that. And one thing I really love about that is you weren't telling me we were about to go into a dark age.
Oh, no, we've already been through it, apparently. But
you beauty.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. There's one particularly fantastic documentary that you can just watch on YouTube that explains it really well, but it takes a few goes to get it. It's it's a really complex thing, and I read a really comprehensive book about it, of which I understood about 1/10 of, but I will read it over and over and over again because I just find it fascinating. I love challenging things that I've always believed, basically. I love it. I love it. New ways of looking at the same things is great.
I feel really proud when I say, there's something that I used to think and now I think the opposite. To me, that's a badge of honor, that especially when you're in your 40s, that you can think, okay, this is what I did think. Now I've seen some things that make me think the exact opposite. And I think part of aging gracefully, in my view, is being able to stay open. I mean, because really, what's the point if you already know what you think and you're not willing to take in more and keep learning? Well, you might as well shut up shop now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, that's what growth is, really, isn't it? Growth is just a kind of reinvention of cells that they keep dividing and spreading and opening up so that then the next thing can come through you. That's exactly what growth is when you look at it in the deeper level.
And interestingly, with growth too, if you think about growth of a muscle, if you're working out and you want to get a stronger muscle, it has to break down before it can regrow. So I like to use that as a little bit of a metaphor for midlife too. You need to be broken down to sort of rebuild and reassess. So, and that was a nice little segue. I just gave you, I think you're the first person in my book that I've given a copy of which I don't know when this podcast is going to go out, whether the book's out or not. But we had a nice little chinwag in our chapter of the book about the fact that we had a mutual pact. For people listening, Scotty and I have hung out for very many years, done a lot of surfing together, family holidays together. And then after we'd done a lot of that, we ended up playing music together. We did an album together, toured the country a few times together, and partied like absolute crazy trash bags together. And we're terrible influences on each other in that way, but had a great time being bad influences on each other. And then at the start of 2018, quit alcohol together. And we have still remained on that path, which has been just absolutely so fun. And I do want to say to any Living End fans out there, or any of my fans, if you come to the gig, feel very free to get smashed and have a great time. We won't be preaching, but we're just talking about ourselves here, because we've both had 20 years in the rock and roll kind of world, and we actually have really enjoyed and benefited from quitting alcohol. So we both had our challenges. We were playing together on New Year's. We both had hangovers, I think. I did. And then we were all like, right, January the 1st, 2018, I haven't had a drink all year, and we still haven't now. So you went and toured the world like a rock star. Like, how did you find that, not drinking?
Yeah, it was because remember before we did this, so that was 2018, was it? January 1, 2018, we stopped taking the alcohols in the mouths. But 2017, I stopped also on January 1, and it lasted for about 6 months. And that was the first time I'd not had a drink for a long time. And I went pretty much straight out on an Australian tour with the band, and we were out on the road for, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks or something, and it was pretty challenging. Yeah, I found myself just wanting to remove myself from the drinking situation a fair bit, but it was pretty good trial by fire, because I was around pubs every day. And everyone else was into it like I normally would be. So I guess it was probably a good way to just go and face it all like in one foul swoop, and just throw all the challenges up for the future, and just have to overcome them straight away, and not draw out the process, just jump in at the deep end. But yeah, it was hard. It was great for playing. That was the thing. Like, it's so good for your playing to not be loose, to be sharp. It's so good for your playing that just kind of gets, I don't know. As you know, that the good outweighs the bad. So when you talk about it, I find myself getting bored of myself awfully quickly when I talk about how challenging it is, because there's how good it is to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just so much better to be sharp, and yeah, I mean, it's it's very humbling to step away from alcohol, because alcohol is such a big part of our culture. So it kind of, not only on a personal level, but on a sort of local level, it just reveals a lot. On a national level, it reveals a lot about the Aussie larrikin, and on a personal level, it reveals a lot about who I've been, who I've grown up to be myself. So yeah, it's just a very revealing thing to take the alcohols away from the mouth.
So did you find, I think I remember you saying at one point, I know I found this, I got a few months in and I was enjoying all the good stuff of it, and then there was a little time, and I don't like to think about this too much because it's so unpleasant and embarrassing, but then you do start to look back at some of your old stuff that you were doing, and you think, oh my God, geez, I was a trash bag.
Yeah, that's what I mean by confronting personally. But, like, you can't, as you know, you can't spend too much time looking over your shoulder, or else you're going to bang your head on something moving forward. So, yeah. And I know that probably sounds like a bit of a scapegoat, but yeah, it's revealed a lot, but it's also just it's gone now. It's in the past, and it's time to move forward, move towards the light.
So we don't want to preach too much. We're just saying for ourselves that we've absolutely dug it. I mean, for me personally, I know drinking was fun, and I don't want to ever tell anyone that it's not fun, but not drinking, I guess because I did it for long enough, I ended up at a writers' festival the other day talking about our chapter, and I was saying some really bizarre stuff. I said to them, I recommend to anyone to drink too much for quite a while so you can quit. Because when you quit, you've been running with all these rocks in your backpack. And then when you take the rocks out, you don't realize, oh my God, and you're off. I mean, for me, like, I've just been practicing guitar like a demon, losing weight, you know, doing the old Wim Hof, doing the push-ups, doing this and doing that. And it's just like, I just feel like in your 40s, that's super fun because you get to, like, you get to age backwards for a little while and feel good about yourself.
Yeah, that's that. If that's a good enough reason to quit, like vanity, then sweet. It's such a good motivator.
Yeah.
If someone feels like they need to stop drinking alcohol and they're a little bit vain, then they've got it made because they can stop drinking alcohol and just get off on how great they look for a little while, and that can probably get them through to then it can become more serious. But yeah, it helps. You know, it helps that it makes you age backwards. I got called Benjamin Button once or twice. Yeah, it is. Rocks in the backpack is a really good way of putting it. It does kind of. You forget how much time and effort it takes to drink a lot. Like there's a lot of sleeping in. There's just a lot of time wasted spent on either being drinking, getting drunk or recovering from it. That's a big time eater, and when you're freed of that, freed from that, all of a sudden you've got all day and all night to kind of do whatever you want to focus on.
Yeah, and it's so good. I mean, I remember a friend of mine told me years ago that we were talking about happiness, and he said to me he'd seen this study or something on all these really diverse people who were really happy, and the one quality, he said to me, do you know, guess what the one quality of all these happy, the only quality that they all shared was? And I couldn't guess what it was. And it was discipline, which is a real shock. Because you think of happiness as like, you confuse it with pleasure. And you think it's just like doing whatever you want, that makes you happy. And I'm not anti-pleasure. I'm very pro-pleasure. But, like, I don't know if it leads to as much happiness as discipline actually does. So discipline is a little harder at the time. But to make yourself genuinely happy, it's usually a result of things that you do every day that make your life better.
Yeah, because happiness is one of those things that it's easy to think that happiness comes and goes. Some days you wake up happy and some days you don't wake up happy. But you've got to bet, and there's an element of reality and truth in that. But if you do things that you know aren't going to do any harm to you or anybody around you, if you use discipline to do the things that you know make you feel good, then the chances of you waking up happy are pretty bloody good.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do things that you know are destructive, and if you operate in an egoic kind of way, chances are you're probably going to wake up feeling like a bit of a thorn in your own side and not generally happy. So I think, when you kind of break it all down to, algorithms and things like this and discipline, like disciplines as algorithms and stuff, yeah, if you punch in a whole lot of goodness to your life, chances are the outcome is going to be waking up feeling happy. Yeah. And I really do think you should call your next album Algorithm and Blues. I really do.
You heard it first here, people. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about that lately. And the funniest thing is all of these things that when you do them, they feel deeply profound. And the truth of those things, it hits you and it's fascinating. But they're such obvious things. And if somebody's, especially if you're not doing them, you hear those words and they're just hollow words. But when you have done that or had an experience of doing that, you realize, oh my God, that's so true. But most things that are true, they're obvious. They're always obvious. I mean, another one is like, say with your music or your passions, if you're feeling a little stale, what you need to do is put more input in. Like say, for me, it might be playing the guitar. If I'm feeling a little stale in a rut, all I need to do is put in more input, work harder, look at a few different things, practice more. And like at the moment when I look at my guitar, and I did mention this in the book because I was right in the middle of practicing a shitload when I did the book, I look at the guitar in the corner of the room and I'm like, you cute little, it's like this teddy bear or one of my kids. I love the thing. I love it. But I haven't loved my guitar like that since I was 15, because I haven't been putting the input in. If I want to get passion out and like just have a whale of a time and lose myself on stage and be in some kind of exultant flow state, it's not going to happen at all unless I put in. And that's something that was missing from me in the past, I think.
Yeah. And it just it was probably missing because, like I said, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of space, a lot of head space to just kind of go and have a drink rather than actually put in a bit of effort on other things. I mean, I always sort of had the tendency to kind of go, well, if I'm having a drink, I'm not really doing anything else. I'm just going to have a drink. I'm not going to bother doing anything else. So it was a big time eater, I don't think that the habit was particularly full on and brutal in like alcoholic terms or whatever. But it was a big time eater, and it was not what it was doing to me. It was what it was taking away from me. It was what I wasn't doing that was the problem. Because now I've got interests and I've got things that I spend time on that aren't doing any harm to me or anybody else, and that they're like your guitar. They're loves. Like I find myself bobbing around from one thing to another that I just find interesting, that I just love doing, and they're good habits.
Speaking of that, I just want to say for the listeners, and I'll try and, I don't know in what form I'll do this, maybe on Instagram or something, but I'd love to get a picture of the mandalas that you've been doing, because that's something that happened since you quit drinking, hey? Scotty's doing these amazing spin you out mandalas that include like rock living end looking things like skulls and double basses. They're sort of like rock and roll mandalas.
I don't know what they are, and I don't know how they started either. They started off as doodles on pieces of doodling on a piece of paper to kill time or something. And now that they've turned into something, looking back, I've always been a doodler, a drawer. I've always liked illustrating, and even back, when I was in school, board at school, I used to doodle and draw and stuff. I was into graphics and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I love it now. I find it so cathartic to sit there and draw. It's just, and I love trying to get it symmetrical. Like these, they're not mandalas like classic mandalas, like they're not all floral and stuff like that. Someone saw them and went, oh wow, that's pretty cool. So what you've got here is like, it's like an ancient sort of thing, the mandala. It's an ancient kind of thing, but it's got kind of like a pop sort of thing about it. It's got sort of like a unique pop kind of element to it as well, because I just draw these pictures and I don't even know what they're going to end up as. I'm just doing them bit by bit, and I guess they're just the sum of their parts. And
have you got an Instagram page for those things yet?
No, I don't use social media anymore. I haven't.
Right.
I've got an Instagram page that's got a few. I put some up on either Instagram or Facebook or something, like a year ago or whatever, because I've drawn like 30 of these things now. And they're starting to get really big and time-consuming, like 40 or 50 hours or something at least, I reckon, would go into those big ones. But no, I don't do anything with them. They just sit there in my lounge room at this point in time. I don't know. I'll do something with them one day, but you know me, I don't like doing stuff with stuff. I just like doing stuff.
I reckon you should put them all on one Instagram page and put them for sale. They're just amazing. But then again, I have noticed, I was, bemoaning this. Sometimes when money comes in, then, after a while you'll be going, these people bartering with me, this took me 40 hours, and suddenly you've ruined your mandala, so,
Yeah, I don't think I want to care about that at this point, what they end up as. I just want to do them. I think I'm finding lately with myself that I like to do stuff before I know what I'm doing. I like to do as much of something as I can before I have any idea really what it is. And I did that with drawing, and now that I've kind of done some drawings, done some big mandalas and stuff, I know I've got a bit of an idea of what I'm doing, but I don't want to get them into the market. I can't think of anything more boring than that at this point. Maybe one day I might need to. One day I might need some frigging money to live. So I might try to, but at this point I don't really care. And I've done it with I did it with running and exercise and stuff. I just got into it without really knowing what I was doing, and now I'm really exercise conscious and health conscious and stuff like that. And I've done it again recently. I've started to, only a week ago, I started learning Tai Chi, and I don't know anything about it, and I don't want to learn about it. I just want to learn it. I don't want to know about it. I don't want to get involved in the nuts and bolts of it. I just want to get into the groove of it. I did it with stopping drinking as well. I just went, I'll stop now. If you got, because it was your and Danny's idea, and I was like, we'll join in. We'll stop as well. I did it with quitting the fags as well. I just stopped smoking cigarettes one day. I just went, I don't want to get into learn about it and get in.
Intellectualize.
I want to do something for as long as possible without really knowing what I'm doing. I like this.
Well, that's really interesting. So much of what you just said there is stuff that I've been thinking about a lot myself lately. And because I love to intellectualize things and talk about them and think about them, it's probably why I got a podcast. But I just think it all comes to nothing unless you do something about it. So you've got to just, I think the brain and the intellect is for thinking about what to do, but then you'll only know about its benefits or non-benefits at the point that you launch in and actually fucking do it. And I like that approach. So Tai Chi, you just went, oh, that looks like fun, I'll do it. And then from the vantage point of having done it for a couple of months, you'll go, it has these benefits. But you'll know truly because you'll be unbiased because you're not thinking about every intellectual idea about it. You're doing it.
Yeah, I did it with meditating as well. I just started to... Well, I did go and learn how to meditate many, many years ago, but I didn't continue it. It was just something that sort of came and went, and I would do every now and then, and I thought, this is cool. I know that this is a good thing to do. But still, I consider myself to be a pretty regular meditator. Like, I'm going through a phase now where I've been pretty consistently getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and sitting for an hour.
Wow.
And I don't know what I'm doing. I don't. I haven't... I heard a podcast where someone was talking about going... There's this thing where you give up the tradition is that you give up a week's wage to learn this, whether it's transcendental meditation or whatever. This is the tradition that it costs a week's wage, whatever your wage is, to learn this particular style, and it's so many hours per day, and you need to learn these practices and theories and stuff like that. And I think that that's bloody fantastic. And it wouldn't surprise me if one day I end up there, because I have enough interest in sitting on my bum doing nothing, otherwise known as meditation. But that's how I see it. For me, I'd like to discover it myself. I'd like to discover my own version of it. I think I've only learned this about myself pretty recently, but that's what I like to do. I like to discover my own version of things that are out there. I don't really care about the techniques and the traditions of it and all that, because if I'm into it enough, I'll understand that and it'll all dawn on me. But I don't know. I like the self-discovery bit, the learn it, the teach yourself DIY sort of ethic.
And it's the difference between having an opinion on something and knowing something because you've actually done it for daily for a while, long enough to experience the effects, rather than I've watched a lot of YouTube and listened to a lot of podcasts and it seems like a good idea. And we're back. We just went outside and both peed on a tree, and we were talking about... Not the same tree, by the way. We were chatting away about meditation, and I was like saying, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've been, going on about that a lot in the podcast and asking people, but I'm glad you were the one who brought it up, because I think it's really important, and some form of it seems to come up for everybody. So, what do you see the value of that as in your life?
Well, for me, because as I was saying, I've got my own version of it. I know there's transcendental meditation, and I know there's mantras, and I know there's chakra meditation, chakra clearing and healing, and all this kind of stuff. And I don't really know much about any of that, but I do sit there for a long time doing what I consider to be meditating. And what sometimes happens is I sit there and get frustrated that I can't shut my mind up, and it's a frustrating hour. That still happens, but what I like about it is that it's just basically, for me, it's a commitment to sit down and just straighten things out, whether that means mentally or whatever. Just it gives my brain a chance to just let things settle, let stop wavering around, stop the boat from rocking around, and just become still. Not necessarily still in a hippie meditating kind of way.
What's the
just still, I don't know. Just still, like, as in, I can sort things out and I can be sure about things, because I don't have anything to meter things by other than just like kind of pure truth and honesty and kind of my reality. So it just gives me a chance for me to know how I feel about things, for me to know what my view is and what my perspective is. And then it can be so like, then I can go on and try and elaborate on another element of meditation that I'll have absolutely no success in explaining. I'll just say that. I'll have no success in explaining this bit, so let me have a go. There's also like the next level bits which happens sometimes. I don't think I've got any control over it. It just comes along sometimes. And I know it's what meditators talk about when they say, they're connecting to something that's bigger than themselves, the hippie bit, like the real yogi bit and that bit. And it's something that I've experienced when I've taken hallucinogenic drugs, and that's probably the most similar thing that I can describe it to in like actual words that make sense, because otherwise it's like a sound that you don't hear through your ears. It's like something that's kind of a little bit beyond your senses. It's just this particular sound, and it's even like a bit of a taste. Taste in the mouth, like some sort of metallic kind of taste in the mouth.
I know that this is something that, like, if anybody has done the Wim Hof stuff, it's probably why I'm so addicted to it, because I love to go to other realms, and the Wim Hof thing, I just get there so quick. It's like I feel like I'm bypassing an hour or two of meditation, And I just get that. I know what you mean about that. What is that? There's even a taste that it's a place.
I know this metallic taste because I've done this. You introduced me to this Wim Hof breathing technique thing, and I've done that. The sucking in of heaps of oxygen. And I think that's what the taste comes from. I think it's an oxygen thing. It's an oxygen. It's a carbon thing or an oxygen or whatever. Something. I don't know.
But it's on that long. For me, it's on that long out breath. And once I've done a couple of rounds of it, so I've been hyperoxygenated, and then a long out breath of no hold, and then the body flicks into this other mode once it gets used to those rounds, and it's like, okay, now we're doing something we never do, and it's time to turn on something deeper. And I'm in your category. I can't describe it.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I want to say because it happens. We're talking about Wim Hof and his, the ice shaman and he's got the cold water thing going as well, which I and the scientific benefits of putting yourself into cold blah 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 blah. I've been having cold showers and I get the same taste in my mouth when I go when the water goes cold. And in Melbourne in winter, the water coming down your tap is cold. I don't know what the temperature is, but you probably count the degrees on one hand. It's cold, and so when you turn it cold and you're standing under it, you go like shock, and I get that taste there as well. And so if I'm getting this taste by just sitting there on my bum with my eyes shut, doing meditation as well. I don't know. I can't explain where this is coming from. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's got something to do with torsion fields and pyramids.
But whatever it is, I just think any way you can get there, it just seems like it's healthy. I mean, it feels good. So, and it feels like a reset. And you do feel like you feel that you've seen something else. To me, it's like when... It's not the same thing at all, but, when you come out of the ocean and you've had a particularly good surf or it's big or whatever, and then you go back and check your phone and you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. That world with those little problems. And I do feel like meditation, different breathing techniques, a whole lot of things, you can do this thing where you remember that there's a whole lot else going on, and that can go on for you, apart from your own everyday little trials and tribulations and bullshit that you get all wrapped up in that probably ultimately doesn't matter very much.
Yeah, it's something that sort of comes along around it. You've got all of the things that happen in your life and the way they make you feel. Your emotions that can go up and down, and you can control to a certain degree and whatever. But it's a kind of, meditation's got something that kind of goes around it all. It sort of bypasses it and it encapsulates it all. But I think that the great thing about it is, we all love getting off our heads, don't we? We did. There's a tendency to like the feeling of that kind of abandonment and whatever it is. If you earn it by doing something like, your art or whatever it is that does give you that feeling of transcendence, that's wonderful. And if you earn it by sitting still and going deep into your own kind of mind, then I think that's what makes it feel so amazing, is that you've earned it by doing so essentially so little, but it goes so far. It's just such a massive, honest turning within on yourself and being truthful with yourself, that that's where you can create a vortex of the more honest and within yourself you go, the better you feel, and you can create you can get yourself into quite a state. I don't know if that's a decent way of describing it, but because before I was interested in it, every time I heard it described, I probably thought,
hippie bullshit,
rubbish, what an idiot. So anyway, yeah, there's my idiotic take on it.
Dude, it's not idiotic at all. And I just think with a lot of deep truths in life, I mean, they make a lot more sense. Somebody could listen to this podcast or this episode and they could not get much out of it. They could go away for a year, do some of the things you describe, and come back and get a hell of a lot out of it. So it really is dependent on the listener, you know, where the listener's at. But I mean, I guess what we're trying to do is get it out there, get the message out there of little things that we found in life that are little hacks that have worked for us. And, you know, if it's somebody who listening who does think that's hippie bullshit, well, they know they know Scotty rocking out on that double bass and partying like no tomorrow, me on that stomp box, you know, going crazy or whatever, and they know that, you know, we've sampled all sorts of things in life and seen it from all sorts of different perspectives. But at this point in our lives, these are some of the perspectives things that are working for us. And I don't know, I think that's got to be helpful.
Yeah, it's nice to feel like you're experiencing change in yourself, and because, you know, change personally, locally, and nationally, and globally, and universally, is the most. It's the most beautiful thing is to see something change, is to see something flourish, or see something change for the better. See something feel better than it used to. It's the most beautiful thing, right? So yeah, that's all we're doing. I think that's all we're doing. We're making changes in our lives that make us feel better.
Absolutely. Well said, brother. Well, thanks so much for this podcast. Once again, you know, I love you very much, bro. And thanks so much for being in my book. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Thanks, Grummold. I appreciate it. You're totally welcome. And yeah, I'm glad you see my ramblings as worthwhile of recording on paper or in data into podcast world, because it's always a pleasure to talk to you.